You probably heard about tourism in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. I've been there myself several times. And it's nothing like what you see in games or horror movies. There are no ghosts, mutants or radioactive anomalies, and death isn't waiting for you at every corner. Actually, I think it's one of the most peaceful and prettiest places on Earth. An example of strength of nature and how it can reverse the damage that we caused it. Thus, when my friend Alexei decided to go there, he knew who to contact. He's a physics student and right now he's doing some kind of research on nuclear fallout, and he said that he wanted to get some direct measurements and samples. But we both knew that it's just an excuse to go on an adventure. We visited the old power plant, the abandoned city Pripyat, and the surrounding exclusion zone. It was nice, but I would probably just bore you with more details. That part is not important anyway. We were driving on some dirt roads in a forest east of Pripyat when we found it. An old, rusty fence and a chained gate that blocked any further passage. There was a big sign with a radiation hazard symbol and captioned, "Restricted Area. Authorized personnel only." There was a pair of massive metal blast doors in the side, an artificially looking hill not far behind the fence, with a large, white, O13, painted on it and "No Entry" sprayed on top. "What do you think it is?" Alex asked. "I don't know. Looks like some kind of bunker," I replied. "And it looks like it has been closed for some time," I added after taking a closer look at the doors. The both halves were welded shut in the center. Alex took his samples and readings, but we were too puzzled to leave just yet. "Do you think we can get in?" I asked. "Well, not this way for sure. Even if it wasn't welded sealed, I'm sure we have no way of unlocking it," Alex replied while examining the massive door. "It looks like an underground bunker. They must have had a way to pump air inside, and I don't think this is it. There has to be another way to get in," I said. We circled the main entrance to try find other means of entry. The day was already coming to an end and it was slowly getting darker. As we were searching, a thought crossed my mind. Why would they weld the doors? What's so important inside that they went this far to keep people away? "Look, there's something there." Alex pulled me away from my thoughts. It was a concrete block a couple of meters large with what looked like vents on the sides. As I looked into the vents, I noticed that they were also sealed with heavy-looking steel hatches and no clear way to open them. However, there was also a somewhat smaller door labeled "Service Tunnel", with a large wheel on the outside. "Should I open it?" I asked. "Yeah, I'm really wonder what this is. Anyway, we don't have to go in. At least we'll see if the door still works." At first, the wheel wouldn't turn because of all the rust and dirt, but eventually it budged. The door unlocked. I pulled and it slowly started opening. It was very heavy and took a lot of force. Behind the door, there was a small platform and a tight vertical tunnel with a ladder. What caught my attention was that there was an identical locking mechanism on the inside. That meant that they could lock the door from both sides. But why? We were lucky, because if they had locked it from the inside too, there would be no way to get in. I stepped inside and shined my phone light down the shaft. It wasn't strong enough to hit the bottom. The air was damp and old and there was something that I couldn't identify. A very faint, chemical-like smell. There was no radiation nor signs of any other hazards. "You've got to be kidding me. This is so cool. We have to come back here and check it out later," Alex said. I couldn't agree more. It was almost dark now, so we resealed the door and called it a day. But we promised ourselves to return. I immediately tried to do some research when I got home, unfortunately with no success. I even tried to call Pavel, a friend of mine who knew the area better than me. Actually, it was him who brought me there for the first time. He couldn't help me either, but promised to ask around. I told him about our plan and asked if he wouldn't go with us, but unfortunately, he was out of the country for a while. A week later, we packed our gear and went on with it. We brought some rope, heavy flashlights, glow sticks, Geiger counters, waterproof protective clothes, an oxygen meter and a small emergency scuba tank just in case. And yeah, we're not stupid, so we told our relatives and friends about our trip and when we're expecting to return. We closed the door behind us as we descended down the access shaft. We couldn't know what's down there and we didn't want to cause a radiation leak or something like that. We eventually dropped down into a concrete tunnel which enclosed the air vents and some smaller pipes. There was obviously no power and thus no lights. Good thing we brought our own. We followed the tunnel and reached another door, but this time it was a regular one, not the heavy bunker type. We went through and entered a room with 4 large air pumps and some electrical equipment and controls. The ventilation shafts split here into 2 larger ones that ran straight into ground and 2 smaller ones that went straight across the room where there was another set of doors. Behind the doors, there was a large hall with numerous boxes, crates and other cargo just laying around. There also was a security checkpoint. Behind the checkpoint, we found the main door that we have seen from the outside. Just next to it, there was some heavy lifting equipment. We returned through the checkpoint and taken a look at a set of elevators. There was a simple map with the layout of the facility floor by floor. We were on floor 0, main entry hall. There were another 4 floors below us. Floor -1, offices, security and recreation. Floor -2, secure laboratories. Floor -3, accelerator, cleanroom decontamination chamber. Floor -4, experiment site. The map was titled, OBJECT-13. It wasn't a military bunker. This was a research site. We took a set of stairs, since the elevators were of no use without power. An unsettling thought brushed my mind as we were descending. They probably were moving some supplies, and then left them there and took the equipment to the main door. Were they trying to get out? I stepped on another stair step, but something rolled away under my foot, lost my balance and fell on my back. My pack luckily absorbed the impact. I looked under my feet to see what caused my fall. Empty bullet casings. This wasn't the sole reason why I felt odd about this place. As soon as we got down to level -1, I noticed that every single door was open. Every single one. There was a canteen and a kitchen right at the beginning of a long rectangular corridor. Various offices surrounded the corridor. There was the regular stuff, paperwork, old computers, personal belongings, all right there where they left it. Did they leave in a hurry? Dmitri. Alex called from the canteen on the opposite side of the corridor. What? Was all I could say when I followed him to the canteen. There was food still neatly served on the tables. But it wasn't spoiled. It wasn't fresh either. But it wasn't decaying, as a 30-year-old meal should. How is this possible? I asked. I don't know. Maybe it was irradiated or something. But it's not anymore. I checked that. I really don't know, man, he answered, as puzzled as I was. Oh, why didn't we just turn back and leave? Now that I'm writing this, there were so many red flags already. Something really wrong happened down there. But I guess we were too excited and curious. But it was at this point that my excitement started to fade and be replaced with an eerie feeling. Nevertheless, we continued and descended down to level -2. The stairwell ended here, and to go deeper, we would have to cross the entire floor to reach another one on the opposite side. There was a security checkpoint and a large blast door that we had to pass through to reach the labs. Again, every door was wide open. However, the things that people left here weren't neatly placed where they should have been. It was a mess everywhere. There were all kinds of rooms with all kinds of equipment that I didn't understand. Occasionally, there were more empty bullet casings on the ground. There still was the one central rectangular corridor as above, but the rooms around it were like a little maze. Almost at the other side of the floor, we found the head scientist's office. As I said, everywhere it was a mess, but I found a logbook on the desk. There was only a handful of pages, the rest torn out. 5. October 1984. Today we successfully managed to translocate several atoms without changes in any physical properties. It's going to be a long road until we can transport solid objects, but we're doing some good work here. 17. January 1985. We've managed to transport an apple today. However, I couldn't help but notice that the pattern of red and green skin on top was slightly different. But it was still the same apple, with the same structure, shape, everything. We also tried to transport some electronics. They were unharmed and in working order. I think that we still have a lot to perfect and learn about this technology, but we cannot slow down now. The country is relying on us. 21. February 1985. After the animal trials, we translocated our first human today. He is alive and healthy, a brave hero of our nation. We have proven that this technology works now, but the practicality is still very limited due to the fixed translocation ratio. We still cannot send matter. Only exchange the positions of two equally massive objects. I have proposed a new type of device that could possibly achieve one-way translocation of just a single object, but it would need an immense amount of energy. 1. May 1985. Our superiors accepted my proposal. They are going to build a new, much bigger translocator here, in the power plant, so we can use a nuclear reactor as a direct power source. There is one more thing. We've now translocated dozens of test subjects. Each one is alive and well, but sometimes they are a little bit, different. They sometimes claim that various events in the past happened differently than they really did. Sometimes they claim to know people who don't exist, or more alarming, they know people who they are not supposed to know. The following was written below with a pencil by hand. Test subject 28 was speaking an unknown language and couldn't understand any real language after the experiment. There was a lot of missing pages afterwards. 25. April 1986. We are going to try to change our approach. It's been more than a year, and we're still unsuccessful in eliminating the translocation symmetry anomaly. We still don't know what is causing it, but we are not going to make any progress this way. Today, we are going to try to access the conduit reality instead. Even though Unit 2, the one we built in the power plant, is still new, we are going to use it for this experiment. Who knows what wonders are waiting for us on the other side? There was one last page in the logbook. On it, it was just a single phrase, written again and again. We let them in. "Alex, I think we should go," I called. "Man, come take a look at this," he answered. I stepped out of the lab and back into the hallway. There were clothes all over the corridor. Well, what was left of them? They were torn to shreds. No bodies, no blood, just strips of cloth and an occasional shoe or a watch. I looked up and stared down the dark corridor in front of us. I just stood there for a while. It was, I don't know, as if something torn all these people to shreds, and then cleaned it all up. Except the clothes and other non-organic material. A wave of pure, instinctive dread washed over me. I couldn't move. I didn't even breathe. "Let's just get out of here," Alex said. We turned around and walked away. Slowly at first, but we quickened our pace. Our footsteps echoed across the underground structure. "I just want to be out of here, man. We shouldn't have done this," Alex said. I didn't tell him about the logbook, but my thoughts were cut short after a sudden realization. His voice didn't echo. It was just our footsteps. I think he realized too, because we both stopped and listened. Nothing. Just silence. I stepped forward. Clack. I took another step. Clack. There was this door just in front of us, and I forced myself to try something. I closed it behind us as we passed it and placed a glass beaker that I found on the ground on top. I took a step forward. Silence. It was just echo after all, I thought. We walked away, carefully at first, but then we once again quickened our pace. We turned around a corner, and then it happened. Crash. The glass shattered. Someone, or something, just opened the door. We dropped all our gear except our lights and ran as fast as we could. I didn't even know I could run this fast. I always tried to be a tough guy, but I was never so scared in my life. Our footsteps didn't echo anymore. Or better said, they weren't in sync with ours anymore. Something was running after us. Each second it was getting closer. And closer. As soon as we reached the security checkpoint, we started closing the door. The rusty joint of the door squealed in protest, but we pulled with all our strength. We almost had it closed, when we heard a loud, guttural and unnatural growl. The door slammed shut and I threw the wheel to the locked position. My heart was pounding so hard that it was all I heard for a while. No, wait, it wasn't my heart. It was that thing, pounding on the locked blast door. We were running again. We reached the stairwell and ran up, taking 2 to 3 steps at once. We finally reached the air pump room. The ascent really exhausted us, and even though I was scared shitless, I felt like I would pass out if I took another step forward. Besides, we locked it down there. Alex sat down and leaned his back on one of the large vertical vents with a bang. Bang! 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 Oh fuck. We locked it down there. But we forgot the vents. Alex and I looked at each other, our eyes met, and then, the vent burst and he was gone. I only heard him scream as he was dragged back down. I feel terrible for doing this, but I just ran. I climbed the service shaft and locked the service door shut when I was finally out of this hell. As soon as I had phone service again, my phone started beeping with loads and loads of missed calls and messages from Pavel. "Hey Dmitri, I found this guy. He says he knows what 013 is. Please pick up as soon as you can. He says it's dangerous and you should stay out of it. This guy is calling me now. He sounds serious. Please call me back at once. I don't know what's going on, but he's going there. Please, I hope you get this before you go down. Stay safe, friend. There was also one message from an unknown number. Dmitry, this is Anatoly Moroz. I know what you found and I'm on my way from Kiev now. Do not go down there. If you already did and you managed to get out, lock the door that you used to get in and make sure it stays locked. I will try to call you when I'm here. So here I am, writing this while I wait. I do this to make sure that no one else repeats our mistake, since I don't know if I'll live long to tell anyone personally. I just can't leave Alex behind. I have to go back. Fucking college kids. What does the sign at the fence say? No entry. What does this here say? He pointed at the text sprayed across the main door. No fucking entry. You think we just put these up because we don't have anything better to do, like you? You really have nothing else to do but to snoop around things you have no business in. He sighed. Now look what happened, look what you did. What your awesome idea brought you. Moroz yelled me after I finished explaining what happened. First thing he did when he arrived was to check the service tunnel and make sure it is closed. He didn't even talk to me, he just ran there and made sure it is sealed and locked. He was an average-looking guy, probably in his mid-50s, but I think people would say that he looked older than he really was. What is this place? I asked. You have no idea, he said, stood up and walked to his car. What are you doing? I'm going to save your friend. And you're coming with me. You will do everything exactly as I say and nothing else. Stay quiet. Try not to exhaust yourself. The air is not circulating and you'll burn all the oxygen and suffocate. You will stay tethered to me by this line. He lifted what looked like a small retractable winch. When I turn off my light, you will do the same immediately and you won't move. He continued and pulled out a shotgun from the car's trunk. Are these going to help? I asked. To an extent. But don't use it unless I tell you to, he said and handed me a pistol. Last thing. Do you know how ozone smells? He asked and I nodded. Good. If you smell ozone, run. I started considering whether this was a good idea when he chained and locked the door from the inside with a massive padlock. This is the only way we can keep them from getting out, he said when he noticed me watching him. Hell, of course this was a bad idea. Worst one I've ever had. So let me rephrase, I was contemplating whether I would ever see that padlock open ever again. Am I not going to get a key? I asked, watching him close it with a loud click. Sorry, I have just one. But don't worry, I'm right here, he said, sliding his hand across the line that we were connected through. The tether reeled back and forth between us as we walked through the service tunnel. It gave me some sense of security. I could be sure not to get lost and separated from the only other person nearby. It created a sort of a weird rhythm with the diesel fuel that sloshed around in the large canisters we carried. Our first stop would be the generator room on the other side of the main entry hall. The generator rattled and hummed as it slowly started spinning up. Did you see it? Moroz asked. What? We have some time for talking until it turns on. Did you get a look at what took your friend, when it happened? No, I answered. What is this place? I asked again. He stared into the air, sighed and explained, it was originally a military stockpile in the 50s. In late 70s it was then repurposed into a research site. Anything that was too crazy for public to know about it, they've done it here. And it was some fucked up stuff sometimes. Then, they had this project about teleportation. They even rebuilt half of the facility to house it. And that's when it all went to shit. How do you know all this? I asked. I used to work here, he said. So, what are these things? I asked. They are, he started but then brushed off. I don't know. I was just an assistant. Is there someone who knows? Not anymore. Everyone who knew, well, let's say they never left this place. And how did you get out? The engine clutch engaged with a click and the generator finally came to life. I didn't. I took a sick day when it happened. The lights turned on for a brief moment and then shut down again as a circuit breaker popped. That's okay. We can't spare the power for the lights. We'll need it someplace else. You'll see, Moroz said. Whatever happened here, whatever killed all the people down here, and God knows how it was all connected with the Chernobyl disaster, he wasn't here. He took a sick day. He took a fucking sick day. Come on kid, let's go. We were at the lab security checkpoint that me and Alex closed earlier during our escape. Remember, stay as quiet as you can now, Moroz told me, and we slowly opened the blast door. To our surprise, light blinded us immediately, something shining right at us. I took a step back while my eyes adjusted to the light, and then I finally saw the source of the light. Alexei's flashlight. I went to pick it up, but Moroz quickly stopped me with his arm and pointed into the blackness of the corridor in front of us. For a moment we stood there, silent, and then I heard something in the distance. Moroz immediately turned off his headlamp and gestured to me to do the same while he went to crouch in the corner. I followed and turned off my light too, but we were still lit up. Alex's light was still on, illuminating the room. Moroz quietly cursed, quickly went to grab the flashlight, and then it was dark. Completely pitch black dark. People say that when you're under stress, and you lose one of your senses, the other ones heighten to compensate. It's true. Or maybe it was just getting closer. It doesn't matter. I heard something drop to the ground with a muffled splat. Then a few irregular footsteps. Not like footsteps of someone walking with a pair of shoes. It was like someone walking barefoot. Flesh on concrete. And they were getting closer. I instinctively grabbed the gun Moroz gave me, hoping I wouldn't need to use it. It was now so close that I could hear a slow, raspy breathing. I think I even felt a cold breeze on my face. Inhale, and exhale. In and out. I don't want to think about how close it was. Then something slammed into a wall down the way we came from, with a crash and the sound of glass and plastic breaking. Whatever thing was there with us turned and quickly followed it. I thought that it's gone and I'm safe. Out of nowhere, suddenly a hand brushed against me. I almost jumped and screamed, but the hand quickly moved and grabbed my mouth, preventing me from making a sound. Another hand grabbed my gun. It's me. Follow me. Slowly, a voice whispered into my ear. We entered a room on the side and I heard a door close silently. We waited for a while and then we turned our lights back on. Fuck. Don't ever do that again, I told him. But he wasn't listening. He was looking at droplets of a thick, black fluid on the floor at the other side of the room. What is that? I asked. Blood. At least it was, once. Moroz answered and followed the trail. We traced it across a few rooms until we stopped in a large chemical lab. There was something on the ground, in a puddle of the black liquid. It was Alex's knife. There was some red liquid too. I could tell what it was without a doubt. Fresh blood. A trail of a few droplets went in the opposite direction than the black liquid. "Look. He must have gotten away," I whispered. "I doubt that. If we want to find him, we have to go to level -4. He just glanced at the knife and then acted like he didn't see anything. "Look. This is his knife. They must have fought here, and he went that way." I pointed in the direction where the blood trail went. "He must be hurt. That's one more reason for us to not waste time. Let's go." He stepped off back into the central corridor. I wanted to stay and search for Alex, but the tether that connected us wouldn't allow that, so I obliged and followed. Initially, "Moroz, please tell me what is going on. How do you know he's not here?" "Because I know." "Just shut up. We don't have time to argue." We weren't whispering anymore. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me why you are so sure," I insisted. "Because he's dead." "What?" "But you said." "Come on, let's go. This is not a place where we want to stay. We have to get down to level -4. Moroz cut me off. "No." I trusted him at first, because he was the only one who could help me and help Alex. That was the only thing I focused my mind on, saving Alex. Only now I was realizing what I had gotten into, how blind and how stupid I was. He wasn't just an assistant as he claimed, and we weren't here to save Alex. I started unbuckling my end of the tether. "What the fuck are you doing?" He asked, raising his voice. "I'm going out. Give me the key to the padlock," I demanded. "No. I can't do that," he said, with agitation in his voice. I had no choice. I raised my gun at him. "Give me the key," I demanded again. "You really think I would give you a working gun?" "You're not going anywhere," he said and pointed his shotgun at me. I pulled the trigger, but there was only a click. "Fuck. Why are we here?" Why didn't you call your friends, your superiors or whatever to take care of this, but you have to hold me at gunpoint? Let's say we don't share the same goals anymore. But have no doubt, they are coming here, but not with guns. With concrete. They are going to seal this place up for good. And we have to be quick if we want to be out by the time that happens. Why can't you just please let me leave now?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Because it's a two-man job," he said and looked me in the eyes. "There are things much more important than you, me, or your friend." I couldn't deny that. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't do this. And I didn't understand anything. "Who are you?" I asked him, returning his gaze. But then I looked away. Something caught my attention. Movement behind Moroz. It was a creature, crawling across the ceiling towards us. Its body vaguely looked like a human, but its skin was pale, and stretched tight over its thin bones. Its veins were visible through the skin, filled with the same black fluid we found earlier. It had no hair and only holes where its nose and ears used to be. Its eyes were bloodshot, locked in a blank stare. We escaped it before, but our argument brought it back. It was too late to run now. Moroz noticed my stare, but he wasn't fast enough. The creature lunged at him. At the same time he turned around and fired a shot, but missed and the thing knocked him to the ground. That shot was deafening in such a tight space. I heard only ringing in my ears. My eyes were slightly blinded by the muzzle flash. In the confusion, I turned to run, but I forgot that I was still tethered to Moroz. After the line was completely reeled out, it jammed, stopping me right in my track and sending me falling to the ground. I looked back and saw that the creature was now looking at me. Moroz was lying there on the ground. I must have pulled it off him by yanking on the tether, and now it would come to make sure it won't happen again. I finally managed to disconnect the tether and threw the useless pistol at the creature, hitting its head. It briefly stumbled and I ran to the only place that quickly came to my mind. I barricaded myself in a storage room adjacent to the large chem lab, blocked the door with a shelf. The creature spent a minute trying to get in, but then gave up and left, presumably to finish off Moroz. And I stayed there, just sitting in the corner, too scared to do anything. I don't know how much time had passed, but it was starting to get hard to breathe. For a time, I thought I would just stay there, and end it all, peacefully, instead of a violent death that was likely waiting for me at the other side of the door. But then, I heard a voice call my name. Alex's voice. "Alex. Is that you?" I called back. "Oh, thank God. I thought I would die here. You came back," he answered. I went to open the door, but then changed my mind. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I was hiding too, but then I heard gunshots, and I came here to look." "Dmitri, please come out, we have to get out of here." I sat down again. Maybe it was really him. But what if it wasn't? I didn't want to find out. "No. He said you were dead." "I saw blood too." "No, it isn't you. It can't be." "What?" What are you talking about, Dmitri? One of those things got me pretty good, but I'm alive." "Dmitri, just please come out and let's get out of here," he pleaded. I have decided. I wouldn't open the door. But then I changed my mind once again, after what he said. "Dmitri, do you remember the cherry tree? I knew you would come back. We used to play at this huge cherry tree when we were kids. We used to climb it all the time, but one day, I had this idea to make a bet. Whoever gets the highest, wins. I got almost to the top, but then I realized how bad an idea this was. The branches under me were too thin, and I knew they could break under my weight anytime. But Alex didn't want to lose. He tried to climb even higher than me. And then the twig he was standing on broke and he fell. Luckily, he landed in a pile of fallen leaves and only broke his leg. He could have killed himself if he fell on solid ground. And it was my fault. I almost got him killed, because of a stupid bet. We decided not to tell anyone how it happened, because we were both afraid of getting into trouble. But I felt guilty for it for the rest of my life. There was no way how he could know about the cherry tree if it wasn't him. I opened the door and there he was. He looked terrible, bruises and scrapes all over. And he had a blood-stained, torn piece of shirt wrapped around his left hand. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I've been better. Let's just get out of here," he replied. "That's not going to be that easy," I said. I told him what happened until now and that the door was locked. Only Moroz had the key and he was either dead or gone. There were some tools and supplies up there, right? "Maybe we can find something to cut the chain," Alex said, and we decided to try it. It was better than searching for Moroz's key after all. We found his shotgun, stained with blood, both his and the creature's, and immediately felt safer. We also picked up our packs that we dropped earlier. Luckily, all of our gear was still there. We carefully walked back to the main hall, but I felt that something was watching us all along. We saw some few old saws and files next to the main door. We grabbed all we could, but we weren't alone. The inhabitants finally decided to make their move. One of the thin creatures crawled out of the stairwell. I aimed, and fired. It fell down from the ceiling, twitching like a dying insect. But it didn't matter, because it wasn't alone. Another one crawled out. Then another. And another. We ran to the air pump room and blocked the door by jamming a large saw between the handles. We worked quick, because we knew that it was only a matter of time until they got through. Or come through the vents. Alex couldn't operate the shotgun with his hurt hand, so he offered to do the cutting while I stood guard, ready to kill anything that would come out of the vents. It was working, but it was too slow. Way too slow. Alex barely got through a few millimeters when I thought that the door would break already. They were pounding on it, slamming into it, and I saw it rattle in its hinges. I thought that they would get through any moment now, and then they stopped. I heard them run away. I coughed when a sharp odor hit my nose. "Fuck. What is that?" Alex asked. "Ozone," I answered. "Oh no, no, no," I said anxiously. I immediately realized that the odor was very similar to what we noticed when we entered the bunker for the first time. Only much, much stronger. My Geiger counter started clicking too. "What's going on?" asked Alex. "That guy, Moroz, he told me about this. He told me to run," I said. Just as he finished, the door shook in an enormous slam, sending dust flying in the air and slightly bending oowards. There was nowhere to run. We had a heavy steel door on one side, and God knows what on the other. I had no idea how we could survive. Luckily, Alex had. "Do you still have the rope?" he asked. Without hesitation, we tied it around one of the pumps. It wasn't easy at first, working with the rope with my hands shaking violently. But then another loud slam echoed through the room. One of the bolts that held the door was launched across the room. I felt a wave of cold run down my spine, and suddenly, I had just this one purpose: to tie the knot. Everything else just shut down in my head. I was done, and we dropped it down the broken vent that Alex got dragged into before. We stepped inside and started sliding down the rope. I then heard another slam, and then what I think was the door hitting the ground. It was through. I slid faster, but the rope was starting to burn my hand. I lost the grip and fell down a few meters, landing on top of another vent. It broke, and I fell through inside another corridor. Alex then landed on top of me. It took us a few moments to get back to our feet. I looked around and saw an orange door titled, Decontamination. We were on level 3. There was no handle, only a button on the wall next to it. I pressed it and the door opened after a few seconds. We entered a small room with a control panel. Using it, I closed the door behind us. Several jets then blasted us with air, a green light popped up, and then, another door in front of us opened, inviting us deeper into the facility. I noticed that the control panel was stained with a smudge of fresh blood. Was Moroz still alive and went through here? We couldn't go back. Our only option was to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. It was supposed to be a clean room, but the place was wrecked even more than the upper levels. After some walking and searching, we found a room that looked like a makeshift infirmary. A few dozens of beds separated with plastic curtains, some medical equipment. Some beds still had information clipboards attached. Patient 2. Quarantine. Survey Team C. Patient in coma. Observation only. Do not interfere. Deceased, 7/28, unknown. Patient 6. Quarantine. Survey Team C. Patient in coma. Observation only. Do not interfere. Deceased, 7/52, unknown. Patient 19. Quarantine. On-site operative assistant, first contact with Survey Team C. Massive blunt force trauma, chest, suspected internal damage, cranial concussion, suspected damage to cervical spine, dislocated L shoulder fracture, L humerus, multiple lacerations, chest. Deceased, 404, internal hemorrhage. Patient 7. Quarantine. Survey Team C. Patient is psychotic and unresponsive. Mild to moderate frostbite. Observation only. Do not interfere. Termination order. Signed, A. Moroz. There were some body bags on the other side of the room. Empty. We searched the area and eventually ended up in the lower levels of the facility. There was this rotten smell all around. We entered a room, and, well, there was this substance everywhere. On the walls, floor, ceiling, everywhere. It was like flesh, with tendrils or veins running across it, like from a Dead Space game. Then we found bodies attached to it. Dozens. Shriveled up like dead insects in a spider web. I think we should go back, Alex said, anxiously. We turned around and went back, but then I heard some debris shift in the distance in the corridor we came from. Soon enough, one of these things crawled into the light emitted by my flashlight. It stood there for a while, staring at us with its blank eyes. And then it leaped forward. Then it fell to the ground, dead, and an empty shotgun shell did too soon after. I heard more of them making their way towards us in the distance, so we ran deeper into the facility. I shot a few more on the way, but then ran out of ammo. We eventually found a long, dark tunnel flooded with water. The things were almost on us. I could see them crawl along the walls behind us. We entered the tunnel. The water slowed us down considerably, and I awaited the worst, but then I noticed that we weren't followed. They wouldn't go inside the tunnel. We walked for I don't know, an hour. 2. The water was ice cold. Luckily it was only about knee deep, so it wasn't too terrible. I already said that Alex didn't look well since I found him, but as we walked through, he seemed to be getting worse. He complained that his head hurt and he felt dizzy. His skin got pale and he looked very weak. After some time, I had to support him and later, he completely collapsed and fell unconscious. We couldn't go back, so my only option was to find a way to drag him through the water. It went like this for some time, but then I heard something far away in the direction we came from. A splash. I turned and shined my light into the black tunnel. Nothing. I went to continue walking, but then I heard it again. Hello. I called, hoping to hear an answer. Maybe Moroz was here. Or did the creatures follow us after all? Nothing. I quickened my pace, but it wasn't easy dragging another person and moving through knee-deep water. The sounds continued. They weren't getting closer or farther, they were just there. Then I reached the end. The tunnel was closed off with another massive steel door and no visible way to open it. It was a dead end. I stopped moving and listened. Those sounds, it wasn't just a splash. It was more like, as if someone or something was wading through the water. I panicked and started banging on the door, calling for help. I had nowhere to go. The sounds were now getting closer. I saw waves in the water. It was now very close. I slowly turned again, and looked into the tunnel. I saw nothing and heard nothing. Just silence and darkness. And then the familiar scent hit my nose. Ozone. Then I heard metal shift behind me, and the door opened. Dmitri. A familiar voice called. Moroz. What? Who is? Oh no, you brought it here. He pulled me and Alex through the door and then shut it again as fast as he could. That's your friend. How? What happened to him? He asked as he looked at still unconscious Alex. I don't know. Are you okay? I asked back. He had a large gash across his face and his right eye. Well, no thanks to you. He responded. He noticed the makeshift bandage on Alex's arm and unwrapped it. What he had on his arm wasn't just a regular wound. It was a bite mark. That, Moroz said and pointed at it. Stand back. He stood up and drawn his pistol. No, wait. At least tell me what's going on. He's going to be dead in a few minutes. This will make it easier. For him too, but mostly for us. What? Please. Is there really nothing else we can do? I pleaded. He looked at me, looked at Alex and then stood there, thinking for a moment. I was immediately relieved when he holstered his gun again. Okay. This might help him, he said, and dug up a case with a syringe from his backpack. It looked used recently and was only about half full with a clear liquid. He injected Alex with the rest of it. It won't matter anyway, he said. What do you mean? Follow me. Take him too if you want, I'm not carrying him. I guess you've probably already figured out that this all had something to do with the disaster 30 years ago. He explained as we moved through the facility. The first machine we used for the teleportation experiments, it wasn't powerful or reliable enough. We figured out that this whole thing wasn't as simple as it seemed. We weren't just teleporting one thing to a different place. We were transferring them between multiple parallel realities. But it was limited. We could only exchange two objects with equal mass between two identical places in two different realities. So, they built a new machine here, and used a nuclear reactor to power it, hoping that we could possibly move anything to any place between two given realities. We started exploring whole new universes, saw worlds where the Germans won World War II, worlds where we all destroyed each other, even worlds where life never evolved on Earth. But then, someone had this idea. If there are these parallel universes, what is between them? There was only one way to know. And that's when it went wrong. As I said. We should have been happy with what we had. But we always want more, right? We tried to access this conduit reality, as they called it. But when they activated the machine, it stayed open. Something happened, and a portal was created, independent from our machine. It was sustaining itself. So, we sent a survey team in there. They came back after a few minutes, reporting all sorts of strange things. About how a strange feeling filled that place, how space and time themselves felt odd, even how some of them claimed to have seen themselves at different places at once. They wouldn't go back, even if threatened with all sorts of penalties. We sent a second survey team later. This one didn't come back at all. So we sent a third team to find them. They came back, but something wasn't right with them when they returned. Their minds were like erased. I pictured the blank stares of the creatures we fought on the way. Shortly after they returned, a massive burst of energy flowed out from the portal straight up into the reactor. But that wasn't all. And you know all this because you took a sick day, right? I asked. I was at a different place in the facility when it happened. I'll never forget when they came to me, saying that something came through into our world. What was it? I asked. I don't know. Nobody knows. It wasn't unlike anything we've ever seen. And it killed almost everyone here. Not just killed, it did stuff to people. You've seen. We're here. We entered a control room, filled with computers and various controls and displays. Moroz closed another blast door and sealed us inside the control. We need to close the portal. We have tried it before, but these things wouldn't let us. So where are they now? As soon as I heard that you went inside the facility and came back, I knew something was off. This place used to be full of them. At least one is still here, the smell of ozone. But a few years ago, anyone who went in wouldn't get alive past level -1. But we've got this far, and I don't know why. That's what scares me. Something isn't right. I know that I am asking for a lot, but we need to go inside the portal and use this. He emptied his backpack and took out a crude-looking contraption with all sorts of wires, coils and other bits hanging from it. We need to place one end in the other reality and then return with the second end into ours. If it works, it might cause the portal to collapse. And how do you know that the same thing that happened to the third team won't happen to us too? I asked. That's the thing. I don't. But I'll tell you this. You know how they built that concrete shield over the reactor? They weren't trying to seal the reactor. They were trying to seal this place, to prevent whatever came into our world from getting out. And a few years ago, the thing we feared most happened. The shield started cracking. They were trying to get out. So, they built a new containment building recently, as you know. But for how long will this go on? Sooner or later, something will fail and they will get out. This might be our only chance to end this for good. How the hell did I get into this? I thought. I was just a random guy at the wrong place in the wrong time. But Moroz was talking as if the fate of our world depended on me. But maybe he was right. Whatever set of coincidences has brought us here brought me here. Maybe me and Moroz were the only people who could do what needed to be done. Alright, let's do it, I said.